Welcome back to the CIO Water Cooler. With so much change happening right now, how are businesses adapting? Well, today I'm excited to be joined by Nicholson, and he's the perfect guest for this conversation because he's passionate about enabling organizations to drive innovation, boost efficiency, and lead their industries with Microsoft Cloud technology, all at a time of transformational change. So with all that in mind, would you mind telling everyone watching a little about who you are and what you do?
Great, thanks. I'm Nicholson. I'm a public cloud specialist lead here at Iomart. My role is really to talk to our customers, talk to new organizations, and any type of customer that is looking to transition and transform their technology estate and their organization by the use and enablement of public cloud. And our public cloud of choice is Microsoft Azure and Microsoft M365. And really, my role is very much around problem solving. I talk to organizations about challenges around their business objectives. And then we translate that into a technology solution that sits within the Microsoft stack. So, yeah, that's what I do. I've been looking and working in Azure since its inception. I'm that old. I actually worked on Microsoft Business Productivity Suite back in the days when it was called BPOS. And I've been in technology for nearly 30 years now.
Well, you're in good company there. Me too. And one of the big topics this year is security in the cloud. We've been on such a huge journey with cloud transformation throughout the years. And I'm curious, from all the conversations that you're having with different customers and clients, etc., are there any particular trends in what they're asking for help with or what they're talking about when it comes to security in the cloud?
Yeah, it's an enormous subject this year, and I think it's top of CIO and CISO agendas. More and more chief information security officers are talking to us. CIOs are moving the conversation over to the CISO to start talking to us about security. Everybody knows now that public cloud is no longer an innovation, if you like. It's a platform of necessity. So it's something that organizations must adopt to move forwards and try and stay with their peers and get ahead of their peers. And security is now top of agenda. If I was to try and list off every topic and trend that we talk about with these guys in the security space, we don't have enough time. So I'm going to give you the top two, top three, sorry, that we talk about quite regularly. The first one really is now zero trust principles. So before and traditionally, the security perimeter is where the CISO sits and feels comfortable, creating that security posture around the data center services, around those technology services that sit within the data center. They can see the flashing lights and they can go in and they can do and they feel comfortable with that. Unfortunately, with the adoption of cloud comes mobility, and with mobility comes devices. So that security boundary, if you like, is no longer in the data center. It's right out there with the device, and it's also out there with the roles that are utilizing those devices. So what we're seeing now is more and more organizations trying to adopt principles within zero trust. And that's about making sure that that boundary and that security principle, if you like, is being adopted by both the role, the device, the human, the network, the connectivity, and the data center services. So these frameworks, to be effective, need the right security solution. And that's where the hyperscalers really do play well. So as I say, it's more and more now that they're moving away from traditional security posture and they're moving into more of a zero trust type principle to make sure that they feel secure when they're leveraging Microsoft or any form of cloud technologies. So that's number one. I would say that's probably the biggest one that we're hearing right now. Secondly, and unfortunately, it's going to come up. It's the buzzword of the moment, and that's AI and ML. It's going to dominate threat protection and response, no matter what, for the next few years. Unfortunately, AI is there for augmentation. It's there for productivity. It's there for all of these great innovations. But unfortunately, it's becoming a bit of a technology arms war. AI is now being utilized by these threats to be more elegant, to be more intelligent about how they attack and where they attack and what they look like when they are attacking. We're seeing more and more organizations worried about things like really strong, unbelievable deep fake so that they can see from an AI perspective. It's uncanny the identities that AI can take on, and even down to the vocals and how the audio can pick up on, audio passwords nowadays. AI can deep fake that. But to the flip side of that, AI is now being utilized in detection and response. So whereas before it was very much a threat. Now it's being utilized as a battle against those threats. Now, Microsoft have got an enormously strong AI integration into their security suites, and they will continue to enhance that to ensure that it becomes more elegant against the threat detection, but also the threat prevention and the threat response against these massively strong AI threats. And we're seeing now more and more security operational centers, SOCs, can not only detect, alert, and respond, but they can do that in milliseconds because of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Whereas before that may have taken hours, it's now down to milliseconds. So that's number two, I would suggest. Number three is data. Again, it's the buzzword of last year, but it will continue to be the buzzword of this year alongside AI. And when I talk about data in the security focused areas, I'm talking about data access, I'm talking about data classification, I'm talking about data protection and data breaches. Customer data breaches is not new, but data now in organizations over the last couple of years, organizations are realizing it's their most valuable asset, both reputationally, but also monetarily. You know, some organizations, data is their asset. So it becomes more and more important to make sure that the security posture and the security classifications and the solution around that data is creating the right environment. And with organizations now wanting to use things like Copilot, wanting to use things like ChatGPT, it becomes more and more important to ensure that your data it's secure, but also its integrity is secure. And it's about permissions, it's about access, it's about identities of roles and employees and services that can access that data. And I'll come on to it a little bit later on, maybe, but from an AI point of view, without data, AI is useless. It really is useless. So I think these are the things that organizations are now seeing with the more sophisticated threats. Data breaches are becoming more and more prevalent and becoming more and more easy for those attackers. We're seeing a lot more now of user behavior and entity behavior that is analyzing and detecting unusual activities on networks and in technology estates. We're seeing more and more organizations adopt RBAC, so role-based access control, to ensure that the right people and the right services, like Copilot, like AI, are able to access the right data at the right time. What we don't want is Copilot, for instance, accessing everybody's bank details in an organization. All their employees have got bank details for payroll. You don't want Copilot accessing that and presenting you with all of their bank details. Or VIP access. So you've got your CEOs, your CIOs that are determining the strategy for an organization. The worst thing and a horror story could be that AI could get access to that and present that to just a normal worker that's sitting there as a role-based worker that can now see everything about the organization. So there's insider trading type things that they've got to be careful of. Then you've got immutable backups. So people are now realizing that it's not just the data that's live, it's the data they've backed up. It's still sitting there, it's still live, it's still real. So we're seeing more and more organizations talk about immutable backups. They're talking about automated DR and recovery so that they can recover quickly from a threat or an attack. And then finally, we're even seeing air gapping. We're seeing organizations taking their backups and putting them into a place that is completely offline and not accessible to digital services that are live in their organization. So it really is changing the landscape, if I'm really honest. We're seeing organizations change the way they talk about data and their security postures. And it's only going to enhance as AI gets more intelligent and as the organizations become more intelligent. That means hyperscalers like Microsoft, AWS, and Google Cloud need to become more intelligent and keep up with those threats and ensure that they are ahead of the curve. So they're the top three, I think, Neil, to be honest with you.
And I'm curious here, with this pace of technological change continuously ramping up, combined with those evolving needs, concerns, challenges, and indeed opportunities, how is the market responding to this?
A good question. I think as I sort of closed out my last sort of comment, I think the hyperscalers are now seeing that artificial intelligence, machine learning, and prompt engineering, for instance, is now becoming the norm. I was at an industry event just before Christmas, and there was a Microsoft speaker there at the time in the sort of business applications and security arena. And his comment was that prompt engineering and machine learning engineering is now the number one role in the US, which is unbelievable when you consider that in the UK, an Azure engineer or solution architect is probably the number one role in technology. In the US, they're now looking at how can we get prompt engineers and machine learning engineers into our organizations to ensure that we are staying ahead of the curve, not just in innovation, but also in our security postures. And Microsoft are fully aware of that. And they are bringing in these solutions and they're bringing in this technology that helps enable that type of framework. For instance, the government, they've gone from draft, they've now introduced new frameworks called the Government Secure by Design, which is not technology specific. It's more about the principles, the activities, the process, the governance that you enable within an organization that allows the design of your solutions and your technology estate to adhere to those. And Microsoft are aware of that, so are the other hyperscalers. And they're bringing those solutions in line with these types of frameworks and these types of security principles that organizations need to meet. For instance, Microsoft, they've got Copilot, and everyone talks about Copilot and they assume we're talking about Copilot in Office. Unfortunately, Copilot has got so many different guises as well now. It's got so many different identities. You've got Copilot for sales, you've got Copilot for Office, and you've now got Copilot for security, which sits within their Defender suite. So you've got an artificial intelligent agent, as Satya Nadella calls it, that is sitting within your Defender suite, both for cloud and for your endpoints, that is working on your behalf. And it's working at a pace that you can't keep up with, and you don't need to keep up with, but it's making sure that your device, your cloud technologies are fully protected from AI attacks because it's AI defending that AI attack. So I think from an industry point of view, it's becoming top of agenda. You look at Gartner, you look at Forrester's, you look at any of the analysts that most organizations talk about when they're talking about technology, and security is becoming, or should I say security is the number one top of list agenda for all CIOs, CISOs, and CEOs now when it comes to any organization in any form of business. And that's really what we're seeing, is that a lot of these organizations are keeping up with that, but the technology providers are keeping up with that. And so are the software providers. They are now looking at how can they utilize more AI technologies and machine technologies to ensure that their solutions are fit for purpose in the security focused area. And we're seeing a lot more of that now.
And I'd love to take you back to something you mentioned a few moments ago. Yes, it is the AI that is the big buzzword, but something we don't talk about enough is data, or being data ready, and the importance of that. We've all seen in the past what happens if you have too many data silos, if you fall into garbage in, garbage out, etc. And of course, AI is next to useless without being data ready. So what are you seeing here?
Again, it's probably in my top 3 or 4 conversations that I have on a daily basis. Everybody wants to use AI and everybody wants to find a use case to bring it in. I don't know a CIO or a head of infrastructure that hasn't been challenged either this financial year or challenged for the next financial year to bring in artificial intelligence in some way. However, the use cases need to be really thought of first of all. You can't just say, I want to put an AI project in, because it doesn't work like that. There's a lot more to it. And what we're finding at Iomart, and what we are encouraging our customers to think about at Iomart, is your data ready first. And there's a 3-stage process to utilizing AI, and 2 of the processes is all about data. The 2 stages before you actually change and adopt your organization to use something like a Copilot, for instance, is all about data. Your data classification, your data readiness, and your data management, down to RBAC, again, role-based access control, to ensure your data integrity is firm before customers start using artificial intelligence. And I think that's key. And I've touched on some of the sort of the scary stories around, you've enabled Copilot in a 90-day proof of concept. However, you haven't looked at the data sets that you've given it access to. So you've now got access to bank data, credit card data, passports, for instance. I know multiple organizations, when we're looking at file services for them, where there are probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of screenshots and or scans of people's passports because they're traveling on behalf of that organization. Before you know it, if Copilot's got access to that, and someone internal, because obviously you've always got to worry about your employees, they get access to that, they've got a passport. That means they know exactly they can go and create an identity around you. So these are the things that you really need to consider. And for us, start at the data landscape first before you start thinking about any type of project that you want to utilize in artificial intelligence. But again, it's down to the security of the data. It's not about the usability of the data, because it's there, it can be used, and artificial intelligence can use it in a matter of milliseconds, as I've said before. It's about how secure do you feel about utilizing any form of service that has AI underneath it and any machine learning underneath it to utilize that data. So the two stages really are: what data is it that you want to use? What does that look like? What does your access control look like around that data set? What is the impact, the business impact around access to that data? Then it's about making it ready. You've identified your gaps, you've identified where you need to secure. Then it's about how do you secure it and how can you make sure that's scalable outside of the data set that you're looking at right now. And then it's about change and adoption. Then it's about enabling that Copilot, that artificial intelligence, that chat GPT type service, to allow it to access that data and use it on behalf of the organization and the employees. But it's about the augmentation of that employee to make that, I suppose, use case of Copilot useful, rather than just because you've ticked a box and you've got it in the license SKU that you want to use. So that's pretty much, like I say, I think it's security and data are the top two organizational customer conversations I'm having on a daily basis now, to be quite honest.
And we covered so much in our 15-minute conversation today around AI, security, and data. And I just cannot thank you enough for coming on here today and sharing your invaluable insights. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.